We're going to be analysing the police video footage of Martin Hyde, the Congressional congressman who was pulled over for speeding and texting. It is my opinion that he is a narcissist, or he's high in the narcissistic spectrum, due to the manipulation tactics and narcissistic behaviours he exhibits throughout the video footage. I'm going to play the video footage, and then throughout I'm going to pause it and explain a little bit about what I think is going on in terms of the manipulation tactics and the narcissistic behaviours that he exhibits.
Hey, how you doing?
How you doing, sir? I'm Sebastian, Sarasota Police Department. You're on audio and video recording. The reason for the stop: you were observed going 57 and a 40, and you were on your phone texting while you were doing that. That was at Euclid and Fruitville.
You don't need to point at me, officer.
I'm not pointing at you. I'm pointing in the direction where it was.
I'll just call the chief, how's that?
Go right ahead, sir. Can I see
You
your
know who
license?
I am, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
So straight off the bat, you can see some of the narcissistic behaviours that he is exhibiting. For example, he's taking absolutely no accountability for the fact that he was just seen, he was witnessed speeding and texting. He has an air of grandiosity because he believes that he is special, and he thinks that he is only understood by people who are special or other high status people, which is why he says, I'm going to call the chief. And by saying I'm going to call the chief is also possibly an example of triangulation, where a narcissist will attempt to pit two people against one another in an attempt to gain control over the situation. So that could be what he's doing there as a ploy. And it's also important to remember that narcissists in general can be chronic liars. So everything that he says in terms of the connections that he has definitely has to be taken with a grain of salt, because narcissistic people in general will want to be associated with high status people because they put a lot of value within that. So I think everything he says needs to be taken with a bit of caution, as they tend to have a preoccupation with success and power and status. And it obviously goes without saying that he is coming across like he has a massive sense of entitlement in just that short interaction. There's only a few sentences, but it says quite a lot about him. The fact that he says, "You know who I am," right? That just screams a sense of entitlement, that he thinks he should be treated differently, that he is special, that she is in the wrong for pulling him over for breaking the law. How dare she do that? And also, anyone who says, "You know who I am," anyone who has to whip out that sentence in general, there's a 99.9% chance that they are an ass.
Can I see your license, registration, insurance, please?
You can do this?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry? I still have a job to do, sir.
Yeah, okay. What's your name?
Officer Baskin, it's going to be on the citation. Can I see your insurance, registration, and your license, please? Sir, can I have your paperwork, please? 7 years, sir.
So you can see that he's already making threats to her career when she says, "I've got a job to do," and he says, "For now." Clear that it's like a threat to her career in some way. And again, this leads into that sense of grandiosity that he has, that he is exaggerating his connections or his experience, that he believes he's much bigger, much more important than this woman, than this officer, and that he could have her job if he wanted to. And it's important to note as well that when he's asking her, you know, how many years have you been in the service, and she says 7, and he asks a couple of things that are completely irrelevant as to what's going on in the situation. She's asked him to show his registration and license, etc. But he is attempting to deflect and divert from this by asking her questions that don't really have any relevance. They're completely irrelevant. So that's a tool that a narcissist will use to often just kind of bamboozle people and maybe confuse them and get them a bit distracted, so they start focusing on a different topic versus what the topic is at hand. And the reason that he's doing this is because the police officer pulling him over, he's took that as a threat to his sense of control. So he's trying to gain control back by engaging in these behaviors and these manipulative tactics, because he realizes that she has threatened his control and he needs to gain it back. And it's important to note that with narcissism or narcissistic people, they're not always conscious as to the behaviors they engage in. It can be completely subconscious. They may engage in triangulation and love bombing and projection, which they might actually be unaware of what they're doing. They might not know that they're doing that. It just kind of happens. But there are other narcissists that are aware of what they're doing, and who knows if he is aware or not. I guess only he knows that.
Can I see your registration, please? You're not going to give me your registration, sir.
You arrest me?
I'm asking you if you're going to produce me with your registration.
I have it.
You don't have it on you?
Look, go call the chief and sheriff. Tell him how rude you just been to me. Play him this video.
Okay.
Then you call Marlon Brown. Then you call the mayor.
Okay.
They're not okay, darling. Tell me what to do.
So another good example of a preoccupation with his status, with power, that he is saying that she needs to go and call the chief and I think the mayor and another name that I'm unfamiliar with, but of course it's going to be someone that's in a high powered position. And again, that is trying to have the officer believe that he is a high status person because he's associated with all of these other high status people. So again, a massive sense of entitlement. He should be treated differently because he's special. He shouldn't be getting any tickets or being pulled over, and it's ridiculous that he is. So once more, he's exhibiting grandiosity. He is also not taking accountability for the crimes that he has just committed. He's broken the law, and still there's absolutely no accountability there whatsoever. And then he goes on to tell her what to do, and he actually gets annoyed when she is responding by saying, that's fine, yeah, that's okay, that's fine. She's been really neutral, and that's starting to bother him because if she's not giving him any emotions and she's not being emotive in the way that she responds, he can't get anything back from that. He can't get any fuel. And fuel can be any type of reaction. So it can be positive or negative. But she's not giving him back anything. So that's starting to bother him because, again, if she's not responding in an emotive way, he can't gain control back over the situation. So you can see he's getting annoyed when he's like, that's not fine. So once more, massive sense of entitlement. He is arrogant. He is not taking any accountability for what he has done. He's possibly lying about his connections or exaggerating them due to his grandiosity. And again, because he's mentioning these people, it could be another attempt to triangulate her, to basically scare her into thinking like, oh my gosh, these people are going to believe him. You know, the mayor and the chief are going to believe Martin Hyde over me. So crap, I better just let this guy go. I better let him be on his way and treat him how he believes he should be treated. And then there's another manipulation tactic in there, which is projection. He actually accuses her of being rude to him when clearly he's the one that's being rude to him. You'd have to be literally blind and deaf not to see that he is the one that's being rude. But that is what the narcissist does, that they project their own behaviors onto other people. So they call out other people for the behaviors that they themselves are actually emitting because they're unable to take any accountability for their behaviors. So it's much easier to just kind of lump them onto other people. And another reason why they do this is because, again, their sense of control has been threatened. So to try to gain back control due to his fragile ego, he projects onto her the behaviors that he is doing. Another thing that bothers me about this clip that shows again his self-entitlement and arrogance and just plain up rudeness is when he says to her, no, not okay. At the end, he actually calls her darling. And you have to remember, this is a police officer. Like, you shouldn't be calling anyone darling, let alone a police officer. He's treating her with absolutely zero respect. Yet he demands respect, even though he's been like exceptionally disrespectful and rude to her.
Okay, sir, are you refusing to produce your registration? I'm asking you if you have your registration.
You're making career decisions.
Okay, sir.
Why are you doing this?
So when he says, why are you doing this? Again, another attempt to deflect and distract, to have her engage in a conversation that, again, is not about the fact that he's just been speeding and texting. He also states that she's making career decisions, again, another threat, and attempting to exert his power over her to make her back down, because again, he's preoccupied with success and power and status, whilst, of course, not taking any accountability.
Sir, because you were speeding and you were texting.
Seriously? Where's your video?
All right. Hang tight.
And then you can see also another example of the lack of accountability when she says you're speeding and texting, and he says who? Where's your video? When of course there's going to be video footage of it. And it's also important to note at this point that when she asked him to give over his registration, he says you can look it up. So he refused to give it over and tried to divert and distract her, and instead said you can look it up. It's important to remember that for later on.
Call the supervisor. I just spoke to your boss.
Okay.
That's not okay.
You want your paperwork?
Is it your Russian immigrant status that makes you talk to people like this?
10-4-10-6.
Call the supervisor.
14 dispatch, can you have my supervisor respond, please?
Yeah. And then we'll see who goes.
Okay.
And again, trying to exert his power and status over her by triangulating her with, I think he says, the supervisor this time. And then he also says, again, no, it's not okay, darling. So trying to put her down, trying to make her feel inferior, trying to gain control over her. And essentially him gaslighting her by attempting to deflect and divert and distract her from the main point of why he was pulled over, which was that she observed him speeding and texting. So he's just refusing to acknowledge what he has done. Asking her, is it her Russian immigrant status that makes her speak to people like this? Again, just another attempt to deflect and divert away from the topic at hand, which is issuing him with the tickets for speeding and texting, and acknowledging the fact that he refused to hand over his registration. And the police officer at this point, which is brilliant, isn't giving him any type of emotional feedback to those responses, because he's saying them to get that type of emotional feedback. He wants to get her riled up to divert away from what is actually happening. And by doing so, the main purpose of that is, of course, to gain control over her and over the situation.
You don't want your paperwork?
6142, Canadian 51, Great Bell
You
Street.
don't have a warrant.
Sir, you're going to be
I'm
issued a
not interested in
citation.
anything you have to say. I'll wait for the supervisor.
You can wait for the supervisor, but I'm going to go through what I need to go through.
No, I'm not interested.
All right, you are going to be issued a
There's
citation.
the registration.
Well, you've been already issued a citation for that.
For what?
For failing to produce your registration.
All
All right. Sir, you're going to
Right
be issued a
here.
citation 57 and a 40 for speeding. Your fine is
right here.
256. Information in the back.
It's
You're
right
going to have
here.
an option to
It's on
plead
your
guilty.
camera.
An option to plead not guilty and an option to take a safe driver's course. If you qualify for the course, it will reduce your fine and it will reduce your points. If you decide to go ahead and
So this is his attempt at rewriting history, saying it's right here, are you stupid? When in reality she asked him, he refused to present it to her and actually told her to look it up. He wouldn't give it to her. So now he's attempting to rewrite history and make it seem like she's the fool and he had it all along, and now she's an idiot for writing up a ticket when he clearly has had it, which obviously is a complete lie. And this is an attempt to twist the truth so it suits his needs and his wants. This could be seen as an example of gaslighting, where he is essentially denying her version of reality and trying to twist it to make it into his fake version of reality. And also at one point he actually tells her to shut up. And again, remember, this is a police officer that he's talking to like that, telling them to shut it up. So his sense of grandiosity and self-entitlement and arrogance and just general utter rudeness is just, it's just gross. It's like appalling. And the reason why he's responding in this way, aside from wanting to gain control, is that a narcissist, their emotional intelligence is quite low. So it's the same as a child. So when something doesn't go their own way, you know, they'll sulk, they'll tantrum, they'll name call. Whereas an adult with the typical level of emotional intelligence will engage in a proper conversation to resolve a situation and to find a resolution. But he is incapable of doing that.
Do that. Just make sure you do it prior to submission of
Do you know
payment.
what? Do you know what he said about you? You want to hear what he said about you?
He could say all he wants about me. I got a job to do, sir.
You know what he said about
Okay.
you?
If
He
you
said
fail
he's
to
had you
complete,
before like this,
okay,
and he's going to have you again.
and that's fine.
It's not fine. Why do you keep saying it's fine?
Again, another attempt to triangulate. So he's trying to pit this, I think it's the chief officer he's talking about, against the police officer that's pulled him over, you know, by making these claims that he's had you before and he's going to have you again, which of course is absolutely ridiculous. And this is what I was talking about earlier with chronic lying, because the history of whatever type of complaints, etc., has been made against a police officer is confidential, and it would be a massive ethical breach for her chief officer to just be randomly telling people that call him what the previous professional history in terms of violations or problems that they've gotten themselves into was, and why he would just be telling a random member of the public that. It's ridiculous. So I think that is just completely made up, and I just think he's using that as, again, a way to try to control the situation. But it doesn't seem to be working with her. She's doing fairly well at not engaging with him at all, but you can see he's trying so hard to kind of catch her. He's putting out the fishing line, but she's not really biting.
Sir,
I'm a law-abiding citizen, and you're being bloody rude to me.
if you decide to go ahead and do the court, just make sure you do it prior to submission of payment, as they do
You think you're winning?
require a certificate of completion. If you sign up for it, you must complete it, otherwise they will go ahead and suspend your license.
So it's quite interesting that he says, you think you're winning. That's a really good insight into how a narcissist views the world. So it's very much, losers, winners, people on top, people on the bottom. Even in a context like this, where he's been pulled over, clearly he's in the wrong. This is a police officer, and he still views this as a situation of someone winning and someone losing. And more importantly, within winning and losing, that's probably the winner has the control, the loser has no control. So again, this whole situation, this whole context of being pulled over is a massive threat to his control. So he's squirming around quite a bit to try to get what he can in terms of grasping at the little straws of control. Well, he's trying hard, but he's not actually successful at it. He's a law-abiding citizen who just broke the law, funnily enough, in 2 different ways, by speeding and texting. But again, the narcissist will use gaslighting in an attempt to rewrite history and to completely dismiss another person's version of events, and will use contradictory statements like that, I'm a law-abiding citizen, even though you've just been pulled over for breaking the law, to confuse and to disrupt and to make people question their own version of reality. So he's just absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that this is all being recorded on video is another example of just how self-involved and self-entitled that he actually is. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he possibly is unaware of his narcissism because of the fact that it is being recorded. So I feel like if he was aware, and he was aware of the manipulation tactics and narcissistic behaviors that he engaged in, he would be aware that if it's being recorded in this video footage, to act in a certain way. So it's kind of lean more towards thinking that he's actually completely unaware.
You are going to be issued a citation for texting and driving. Okay? You are going to be issued a citation for texting and driving.
And then he whips out his phone and starts recording her, which is kind of hilarious because she's literally been recording him the entire time. And then he says, oh, you're talking to a congressional candidate like this. And boom, there you have it. Again, massive sense of entitlement, a belief that he is special. He's high status, and people who aren't special just couldn't possibly understand him. And it again kind of leans in towards the fact of what I said previously, that he has a preoccupation with success and power and status, because it literally exudes out of him.
Fine is 116. Information in the back. You're going to have an option to plead guilty and an option to plead not guilty. You are going to be issued a citation for failure to provide your registration upon request. Your fine is 116. Information in the back. You can plead guilty or not guilty.
You're lying.
Green paper.
Give him the citation. You
Green
lied.
paper tells you
Why
you
are
have 30
lying,
days to replay.
Why are you lying?
You have 30
Why
days to
are you
reply.
lying?
Your payment options
It's a
are on the
simple
green
question.
form.
It's a simple question. Why are you lying?
Phone number on the bottom in
When your
case you have any
supervisor
questions. When my supervisor comes, I'll wait for him with you if you like me to. Your citation's over here. You can
have to
accept
wait.
them.
You have
I
to
will wait. I will wait, but I will wait
No,
in my
wait a
car.
minute,
There you
darling.
go.
Saying that she is lying about one of the tickets where he had failed to produce his registration. That is an attempt to gaslight her. So again, he's trying to rewrite history and he's trying to deny her experience of what happened, which was him not giving it, telling her to look it up, clearly refusing to give it. I think she asked about 3 times, wouldn't give it, and now all of a sudden she's lying, and that means that she could have her job, she could lose her job because she was lying, which of course is ridiculous. That's an attempt at him to gaslight her. And then again, he whips out, "Don't point at me, darling." Another threat to his control that he perceived as a threat to his control, a point which I doubt was at him. I'm sure it was just in his direction. But that to him is a threat to his control. And then darling is an attempt to devalue her. And you can also hear the officer there. She let a little bit of emotion slide out when she said, I'll wait in my car, compared to all the other stuff she said, which is quite kind of neutral. And it seemed almost like she was using the grey rock method, which is basically when you are very kind of blank, you're very neutral in your responses and interactions with the narcissist. So you're not emotive in any way. Like you're not angry, you're not excited, you're not happy, you're not sad, you're just blank. So she was doing quite a good job. And is still doing quite a good job, but that I think is one of the only times where there's like a tiny hint of emotion in her voice, which is pretty amazing considering that I think the majority of people, let alone officers in that scenario, probably would have got sucked into his attempts at defection and diversion and distraction, and you know the people will want to feel like they have to defend themselves, so they get sucked into it, like the Russian immigration status. I think a lot of people would have wanted to engage in that to kind of prove him wrong and, you know, stand up for themselves and their ethnicities or their identity or nationality or whatever is the case. But she didn't, and I think that's pretty commendable.
Yeah, but you have the bad.
Sir, step back into your car or stand on the sidewalk so you don't get hit by a vehicle. It's for your safety. 14 right here. Can I have another unit respond?
So he's still acting like a massive baby. He's shouting something in the background. I'm pretty sure he's saying, "I'm going to call blah, 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 and you can talk to him yourself." So throwing all of his toys out of the pram. And I quite enjoy how the officer, of course, has to tell him to go and sit on the pavement for his own safety. But yeah, that was kind of enjoyable because just another way that she is asserting control over him, and he will absolutely hate that.
Sir, stand over there. It's for my safety and for your safety. Sir? 10-4, the driver being extremely uncooperative.
10-4.
Yes, Sarge.
6142 to 6715, are you anywhere closer?
I can't. He won't let me leave until a supervisor shows up. Martin Hyde. I just gave him 3 tickets.
Okay.
Yes. Bye. Speeding, 57 and a 40, texting while driving, and failure to produce his registration because he told me I could look it up. And he's gonna have my job. Everything is on camera. Alrighty. Bye. Are you still waiting for a supervisor or are you leaving?
Reggie, I'm just coming now.
Okay. Very good.
Oh, by the way, he's a friend of mine.
I'm sorry?
I'm aware of that situation.
Okay.
I'm on my way over there.
So by the way, he's a friend of his, just in case you didn't know that. Again, another example of grandiosity, of trying to assert control by, exaggerating his connections to people, and being able to, he makes it seem like on a whim, being able to call all these high status people that they're all just going to be coming down to help poor old Martin with his speeding ticket and his flipping texting ticket. It's ridiculous. This can also be seen as yet again another attempt to triangulate her with this person that he mentioned to, I guess, essentially claim that what this police officer is doing to him is wrong. So this guy that he's mentioned will be on his side, and then the police officer is going to be the one to get in trouble. That's ideally what Martin Hyde wants the police officer to believe and wants her to think. And if, let's just say, it is true that what he's saying, that this dude is a friend, that is what he would try to do as a narcissist or as a manipulative person. But like I said, they are chronic liars, so you have to take everything with a grain of salt. My guess is that his relationship with all these people is just massively exaggerated.
You know Pat Robertson, right?
Yes, I do, sir.
And another name drop to try again to push his high status and power and connections to all these people.
Why are you doing this?
Because I have a job to do, sir.
Not like that.
Nobody's above the law.
No one's above the law. You have to have some degree of respect for law-abiding.
That degree of respect started the moment I walked up to your car, sir.
No. You knew exactly what you were doing and you made a mistake.
If that is your feeling, you are more than welcome to fight the citations in court.
I'll fight the citation. I'll
Okay.
fight your employment.
Okay. You're more than, you're an influential person.
Very.
You can go ahead and do that.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Why don't you just say you're sorry?
Because I did nothing wrong, sir. I was doing my job, but I am going to ask you either to sit in your car or step on the sidewalk because I don't want either one of us getting hit. Okay.
So that's another good example of projection. He states, why are you doing this? When in reality, it's actually her that should be asking him, why are you doing this? He again has took absolutely zero accountability. He is acting like a massive ass and being incredibly rude and disrespectful, but he's accusing her of being disrespectful. Another example of projection and massive self-entitlement. He's asking her why she didn't say she's sorry. And sorry for what? He's literally been texting and speeding. She's pulled him over, rightly so. And yet he is still expecting her to say sorry to him. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's just such a good example of projection. Him calling out his behaviors in other people because his control has been threatened. There's absolutely nothing that she needs to apologize for. It's him that should be apologizing to her. So again, his sense of entitlement and grandiosity is outrageous, and his lack of accountability is just, it's kind of impressive as to how insane it is.
Sir, I have nothing more to say to you, sir. You requested my supervisor. You can have the conversation with them now.